Hello there friends and welcome. For today's Pathfinder Enhanced Guide we have a very fun build. A Trickster that's for once focused into all of the Persuasion, Mythic tricks that can grant you extremely powerful passive auras. To the point where you'll even get to make enemies instantly kill themselves, that's right, by just starting battle against them. Not to mention a Demoralize or Intimidate aura together with a Paralyze one as well, all stacked together at once. And we are not just about our auras, because we can still bonk the enemies on the head with our massive hammer weapon to easily take care of anything that manages to survive our deadly auras. Plus you'll still be supported by your highly powerful big kitty, a Smilodon, with a lot of attacks per round, damage, and also any tanking you might need. Now, before getting started into build progression, I want to first cover how each of the special Trickster Mythic Persuasion tricks work, as they will be a core part of our build. The first one can be acquired as early as Mythic 3, which is Persuasion 1. You are so good at demoralizing enemies that just entering combat against you is enough to demoralize them. Note that it says just entering combat. This is important because all of the auras work like this. Battle has only but to start for the auras to affect the enemy. The auras apply even before initiative has rolled, they are that good. Also, the range is absolutely absurd. I mean, battle started from what's called here, and despite our Trickster being way over there, the enemies still exploded. But anyways, the first Persuasion trick will demoralize enemies. Demoralize means shaken, and shaken is equal to a -2 penalty to the enemy's attack rolls and saving throws. By itself is a pretty good debuff, because it's permanent, but most importantly it lets you easily proc the Shatter Defense's feat to reduce the enemy's AC by massive amounts, and we'll get this super early. Another important tidbit is that demoralize checks are super easy to make even if you are on unfair. Because of how high you can increase your persuasion, it might not seem like much here, but we still get a lot of bonuses added to this when it comes to intimidating the enemies, which is a second part of persuasion. At endgame you can easily reach 80 to even 90, even without the D20 roll, which is more than enough to apply this skill to any enemy in the game. The second persuasion skill, on the other hand, will attempt to paralyze the enemies. If they fail a will saving throw, and this is important, equal to 10 plus your ranks in Persuasion. Note that it says ranks, so unlike Persuasion 1, which works based on your final modified Persuasion to Intimidate value, Persuasion 2 works on ranks only, and ranks are limited from 1 to 20, the skill points you spend at level up. So it is true that Persuasion 2 has much lower DC than 1 and later 3. The max being only 30, which is 10 plus 20. It is true that 30 isn't high DC, but there are ways of overcoming this. For example, because the auras work together, the demoralize effect that shakens enemies for -2 to saves will apply first. So it's as if the Persuasion 2 DC was always 2 points higher. Sure, if you were playing on, let's say, unfair, chances are you won't hit all of the enemies with this always. But even the ability to reduce and thin some of the pack is more than enough. And as I said before, this is a free ability, right? It's an aura, it doesn't cost anything to activate, you'll still get all of your attacks at the same round. Last but not least, we have the ultimate persuasion trick. Now this one is really amusing and extremely powerful, as expected out of the Trickster Mythic path. Enemies that fail their saving throw against your demoralize ability, so just like Persuasion 1, it works based on your full Persuasion to Intimidate ranks, will have to spend their first round making a coup de grace against themselves. What this means is essentially they'll instantly kill themselves, right? Because the coup de grace does that, it instantly kills enemies. They can save against the coup de grace, but it's extremely rare. You might be wondering why both the Succubus and the 2 Locust Swarms were able to survive against our instant death aura, despite the fact the other 2 Locusts, not Swarms, and also the Galus Stormcaller were actually instantly killed by it. For Persuasion 3 to work and kill the enemies, they have to first be able to perform the coup de grace maneuver against themselves. The Succubus cannot do it because she's wielding a ranged weapon, and coup de grace only works with melee or natural attacks. As far as the swarms, but to put it simply, they also cannot perform coup de grace. Usually it's only going to be ranged enemies, but they will still be shaken, and potentially paralyzed. So now that we know how all of the persuasion tricks work, let's now finally get into our Persuasion Trickster build progression. When it comes to class, we'll be going with Ranger and Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer is one of the most solid class options in the game. You have quite a lot of powerful features, most importantly favor the enemy against all the demons in the game for free, so that's potentially a plus 10 to your attack and damage, which is also applied to your own pet's bonuses, and Rangers can get a pet as early as level 4. Lastly, you'll get some free feats through combat styles, and this time I'll be going for Menacing, so we get a lot of nice Intimidate and Persuasion feats for free. For race, I really like humans as always. The extra feat early game really is a big increase to your power. This build will be somewhat feat starved because we have to invest in a lot of stuff. There's the Trickster special critical ones, the Persuasion feats, the core melee feat package. Of course, you can also go with another race if you prefer, because at the very least 2 feats you'll be picking aren't really necessary. So it makes up for not having the bonus human feat. For background, the classics Researching and Pickpocket, the other ones won't really matter. As far as ability scores, Strength is our main attribute. You want either 19 or 20, as Tricksters can enhance the gear they find with a +1. 12 Dexterity is more than enough, then 14 Constitution. I would then dump Intelligence to 7, because as a human and a ranger we have a lot of skill points. Even at 7 int we have 4 per level. Then 14 Wisdom, so that we can cast all of the ranger spells, and some of them, especially the level 1, 2 and 3 ones, are very powerful self buffs, without having to rely on headbands that increase wisdom. This way we can free the helmet slot for more useful things. You don't really need high charisma with this build, because a lot of our strength will be added to it, we'll be getting skill focus and so on. Even endgame, you'll still have more than enough persuasion to intimidate enemies. As far as skill points, athletics, because of our high strength. Persuasion is also a must-have since our build is all about it. Then the other skill points are really up to you. We have some decent wisdom, so why not go with perception, and use magic device to cast scrolls from other classes. As far as your level 1 feats, well, the feat selection will be similar to my two-handed characters. I'm afraid if you're looking for maximum efficiency, even early game, there's not really much you can change about this. Power attack, and then cleave. We are two-handing our weapons, and well, the extra attack at level 1 really matters a lot. It's double your attacks after all. For deity you can go with any that allows the chaotic Trickster alignments. I think Alistria fits this build, so I'll be going with her. And then, well, you can pick any chaotic alignment here, doesn't really matter. Now for level 2 we'll want to go with the Menacing style of combat feats to get all of the nice Persuasion and Intimidate boosting ones. First with Intimidating Prowess, so we get to add our Strength modifier, which will be super high, to our Persuasion checks when attempting to intimidate the enemy, which is what all of the Trickster Persuasion auras do. For level 3, Cleaving Finish of course, for yet another potential extra attack, even as early as level 3. For your first favorite terrain, Urban, as a lot of Chapter 1 and the hardest part of Chapter 2 takes place in a city. At level 4, be sure to increase Strength, which is also what you want to increase on all of the other levels. And then go for the Animal Companion, and you can pick any you want, but if you want the most powerful ones, then either the dog, the wolf, or the boar. Because I always pick these pets, I want to do something different now, and this time I'll go for the Smilodon. It doesn't get trip for free like the pets I mentioned, but it does start with 5 attacks per round, which is insane, considering even a max level character wouldn't have 5 attacks unless they were dual wielding or affected with haste. Plus I think it's overall one of the most intimidating pets we have, which fits our build, and who doesn't want a large kitty? At level 5, pick Boon Companion, because the Ranger's pet scales at their level -3, with this it will fully scale to our level. For level 6, Menacing, and for once we'll be getting Shattered Defenses extremely early, and outright bypass both the Weapon Focus and the Dazzling Display requirements. You might ask how to proc this so early. Well, use the Demoralize action that any character in the game has access to, even party members. Good options are Darren, because he has high persuasion, the same for Ember, as they both have charisma and persuasion. Eventually, at around level 10, you'll get the Trickster special persuasion auras anyway, so the enemies will always be intimidated, even at the start of battle, which means shatter defenses will be on 100% of the time. For level 7, the choice is simple. Outflank, a must-have for pretty much any melee and ranged builds. Especially as a Trickster, because our attacks of opportunity will fly. And remember, the Trickster Persuasion auras are passive benefits, right? So our character will still retain the ability to full attack for that round. For level 8, pick favorite terrain underground for some of the dungeons you'll soon be facing. Then at level 9, lunge, so we add reach to our weapon. And with this build, I didn't really go with a reach weapon, so this can help, especially after we apply size enhancing spells. It's even better when you combine it with attacks of opportunity from outflank and our high Trickster critical range. For level 10, menacing again, and improved critical. Now, you can pick any weapon you want. I mean, if you want the most OP weapon of them all, it would be Great Axe for the Gravesinger. Plus there's also the other high critical range weapons like falchions and scimitars. Since I've already done builds with those weapons before, I want to try something different. This time I'll be going with Earth Breakers, that's right. Mostly because I think it fits our build a lot. I picture this skinny Trickster girl character, and she has this massive hammer to bonk the enemies on the head with. I mean, even our Trickster portrait carries a hammer, so why not, right? And Earthbreakers are certainly one of the most intimidating weapons too, what with their size. They don't have good critical range, but through Trickster we can eventually overcome that. At the very least, their critical damage will be quite powerful. But like I said, you can just pick the other more optimal weapon choices, this one is for fun. For level 11, combat reflexes at last, as at this point we already have outflank and improved critical. The more criticals we get, the more free attacks from outflank coming as attacks of opportunity, which can be enhanced by combat reflexes. For level 13, I will just go with improved initiative. Now, since we are going for all of the Trickster special persuasion feats early, this means we can only acquire the special Trickster critical feats later, as they require the Perception 2 Mythic Trick, usually at around Mythic 6. We'll be getting there soon enough. For another favorite terrain, Abyss, because you're pretty close to chapter 4. For level 14, skill focus into Persuasion at last. We do take a while to get this, but like I said before, it's very easy to intimidate enemies from all of the buffs you get. And this is just in time for chapter 4, where enemies become a lot stronger. For level 15, well, you might as well get weapon focus into your weapon of choice, Earthbreaker for me. As I said before, it's not a necessary feat, since we have Shatter Defense for free, which means you don't necessarily have to be a human. Now, before entering into level 16, be sure to level your character to Mythic rank 6, so we can then pick Perception rank 2 to finally get access to the special Trickster critical feats. To me, Mythic 6 is often around level 16 to 17, depending on how fast you rush for it. Now, assuming you're already Mythic 6, by level 16, this is when we want to multi-class our character, because as you might have noticed, we don't really have many feats left, only one at 17 and the other at 19. The one we would get as a combat style feat won't really work for what we want, which is the triple Trickster special critical feats. The best way is to go Cavalier and Gendarme. This way we have the feats we need, we keep our pet's progression to full, and we also have high base attack bonus progression just like Ranger. And if you're wondering about why I'm really going with Gendarme for all of the multiclassing bonuses explained, please remember to check my multiclassing guide to the side here or in the pinned comment down below. As far as your Cavalier's order, it doesn't really matter because you'll only be getting a few levels into it. You might as well go with Cockatrice. It is true that we already have Shatter Defenses, so no need for that on display. It's just that the other ones, they don't really have any noticeable bonuses as far as level 1, 2 and 3. For your first bonus feat, the must-have is of course the first Trickster special critical feat. Now resume progression into Gendarme until around 3. For level 17, the second special Trickster feat for the ultimate critical range possible with Earthbreakers. Then at level 18, the last Trickster special feat for higher critical damage. The bonus from Cavalier's charge is pretty nice too. Now from level 19 onwards, you don't really have to keep going as a Gendarme, because your other bonuses don't really matter. I mean, the other bonus feat will only come at level 21, which we can't access, so... What I would do now is go for the classic Alchemist and Vivisectionist dip, for the 1 dice of sneak attack, but most importantly the mutagen, and the higher our strength, the higher our intimidate, and instant death and demoralize auras too. It's not really needed, however, you can just resume progression into Demon Slayer until 17 if you prefer. As far as level 19, I recommend you pick Meta Magic and Completely Normal spell, as usual because it can really provide a lot of spellbook flexibility to any Trickster character. For the alchemy spells, honestly it's just going to be True Strike, Shield, and that's it. The last level I would pick into Demon Slayer, if only so we can get improved evasion, which is pretty handy when it comes to avoiding enemy spell damage. Alright, now let's cover Mythic Progression for our Persuasion Trickster. Close to the Abyss is the most optimal one here, as the extra gore attack will work with all of our melee hits. Bit of fun isn't really necessary, because the bonus is Circumstance, we only really need it to Persuasion, and there's a certain gear in the game, the Signet of House Vespertilio, that can enhance it by +5 every rest. For your first mythic ability, well, if you are playing on Unfair, you might consider Last Stand because of how useful it can be when you take double damage, but this character has Reach from size spells and feats, and later can just ride their pet for the AC anyways, plus the auras that instantly give the enemies. So what I would pick instead is Leading Strike, which has amazing synergy with mounted characters, for even higher damage on hit. For Mythic level 2, Mythic Power Attack, to increase our damage even further as we are two-handing. For Mythic level 3, the classic Ever Ready. It really is amazing, especially for Tricksters with their super high critical chance for even more attacks of opportunity. Now for your first Mythic trick, you have two choices. You can go with Knowledge Arcana 1 here, so you'll find gear with better boosts, increased by +1. It's just that for the Persuasion build, I think it's much better if you already go for Persuasion 1, for the first aura that demoralizes enemies. For Mythic rank 4, Mythic Critical into your weapon of choice, and then Arcana 1, plus at last Persuasion 2, so we get the Paralyze aura. For Mythic level 5, you have two choices. If you have a Scald to provide the Pounce ability which lets you full attack after charging, then Mythic Charge. Otherwise, already go for Mythical Beast to empower your pet. For Mythic level 6, first Mythic Improved Initiative, and then Perception rank 1, and 2 for the Trickster special feats. Now, for Mythic 7, Mythical Beast. And then, well, since you have high athletics, you might as well go for Athletics 1. And at last, Persuasion 3 for the Instant Death aura. For Mythic 8, Mythic Skill Focus into Persuasion. It's not that needed because of how high our Intimidate score gets, but it can help, at least for Unfair. And World 2 for even higher critical chance. This also increases the power of your skills too, because if you roll a 1, even the skill check will become a 20. As for Mythic 9, you might as well go for Last Stand as usual, just in case. Then Lore Nature 1, and you have two choices, either Athletics 2 or Religion 2. If you go with Athletics 2, you can actually pick Athletics 3 at Mythic 10, which will increase the number of attacks you can make and even your base attack bonus to 25, something only Legends can do. Otherwise, if you don't care for Athletics 3, you can then pick Lore Religion 2 and 2 domains of your choice. As far as Mythic 10, you can go with anything you want, and for the Greater Mythic trick, I do think Athletics 3 is the most efficient one overall. Now let us cover gear for our Persuasion Trickster. The amulet is always Velexia's for the highest boost to strength possible, which also increases our chances of intimidating the enemy. For armor, Chainmail of Camaraderie is the best, we don't care about AC because of Reach and our pet, and the bonuses to attacks of opportunity are even better with a Trickster. For belts, well, at first belts that enhance strength, ultimately physical perfection ones, for +7 with a Trickster to all of your physical scores. For gloves, Fencer's Gift if you want the best damage boost. Otherwise, earlier you can also go for the Gloves of the Ambassador for the bonus to Persuasion and Charisma, or the Oppressor's Gloves for the bonus to Intimidate. For boots, there really isn't anything special. You might as well go with Stampede because of our high athletics. For helmets, if you want a little bit more Ranger spell slots, you can go with helmets that increase Wisdom early, but since we start with 14, you won't really need them to cast all of your Ranger spells. Ultimately, the Hat of the Bitter End, because of how fast this character can slay enemies. Or you can just go for Headbands of Mental Perfection too. For glasses, the Goggles of Piercing Gaze for the huge bonus to Persuasion. Plus the damage against outsiders like demons to attack and damage is great too. For cloaks, as the Trickster Mythic Cloak is rather poor, just go with Cloaks of Resistance with the highest modifier. For rings is the usual for two-handed characters, Triumphant Advances is always the best, to double morale bonuses, which by the way even works as a way of enhancing our skills even further, it's not just about AP and damage. And of course, Imminent Demise for the extra boost to two-handed weapons, which surprisingly enough stacks with other competence sources. For braces, you might as well stay with the braces that you start the game with, the Lucky Bracers, but eventually Abrupt Onslaught for even higher sneak attack damage. And just a note, when it comes to ring, you can also go for this one here for the bonus to Persuasion, but it won't stack with the gloves that also increase Persuasion as they're all competence. Now let's cover weapons and Quickslots for our Trickster. For weapons, I decided to go with Earthbreakers because of how fun and thematic they are for this build. After all, who doesn't love huge hammers? The best one is Clawfall, which can be acquired at the Bear's Maw Shrine area during Chapter 5. The Undead Bane property is rather useless, because at this point we don't really fight many undead, but the Destructive unique property is very rare and extremely powerful as it increases our critical damage even further by another ×1. You can however also go for the last version of Finian for the endgame. Brilliant Energy and Heartseeker are very powerful properties, but I'd much rather the critical damage boost, especially since we are a Trickster. Finian also works early with the starter version, as there aren't that many good Earthbreakers. And remember, even the lowliest version of Finian can be enhanced a lot. Like I have my weapon here, just check my recently released How to Enchant and Upgrade Your Weapons to the Max guide for how to get all of these nice properties on it. As far as Quickslots, the Signet of House Vespertilio is essential when it comes to increasing your Persuasion to the max, so that both your Persuasion 1 and 3 tricks will always hit. A Greater Quicken Rod, only if you want to cast some of the Trickster spells as swift actions, most importantly Trick Fate, but you can just pre-buff with it outside of battle too. Extend Rods, once again to extend Trick Fate for 6 rounds, and by the way this also works for your skill checks, so the Persuasion Instant Death aura, as it also makes you roll 20 on them. The Dragon Familiar Jarsigax for extra damage on hit, and lastly, the Old Grimoire, which can grant you extra slots of level 1, 2 and 3 for Ranger, and most of your powerful Ranger spells are exactly there. And of course, Use Magic Device lets you cast scrolls for spells from any class. Well, so this was it for my Persuasion Trickster guide. If you found it useful, please remember to like, subscribe, and also consider becoming a channel member. You'll even get to request custom videos just for you. Thank you for watching and see you next time, friends.